بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Okay, so we are this lecture 4 about how to write a research paper. We've talked about how to write an abstract, how to write an introduction, how to write a related work section. And today I made a full lecture about references, although many of you may say, okay, references, this is part of related work. But yes, it's part of related work, but we need to have also a focus on this to know the standards related to references and also the best practices on how to analyze reference. And the things that we're presenting here, they help you to write papers and they help you to review papers. Okay, so sometimes when you receive a paper, you want to review it. One of the things that you have to look at is the references part. And I'm going to show you how to analyze the references part and whether it is according to the standards or it has to be improved. Okay, so the importance of references in research is to uphold the academic integrity. It means you need to make reference to people that you are using their works. Okay, for example, if you use something I don't know about transformers or I don't know things in robotics, you use some existing technology, you need to make a reference to that work, as this is the basis of your study. To acknowledge the work of others, to validate argument and findings. For example, in the results, when you discuss results, you can say these results confirm, the results that was found in another paper or contradict the results of our paper, and you make a discussion. So these are the different things where we use the references. The presentation coverage. Okay, so I'm going to present the purpose of referencing, the different type of references, and overview of major references styles, the best practices and the common mistakes made when writing references, and also different tools and resources effective. Okay, so I consider that the main purpose of references, especially in the literature review, is to discuss the research gaps. I think you've observed several times that I emphasize too much about this because this is like the most topic that is oversight in research papers. People don't discuss the gap and they don't highlight their contributions. So usually we cite other works, especially when we want to highlight our contribution as compared to others. And this has to be very explicit and very clear and set the stage for presenting new insights and contributions that you made on your paper. Also, you must show some sufficient background and perspective on the field that you are working on. Okay, you must show that you are knowledgeable with the field, that you have familiarity, that you know what's going on. Okay, and this is by making an extensive literature review, show the foundation of theoretical and empirical research, and also acknowledge prior work and avoid plagiarism. Give credit to others, for example, if your work built over previous work, either it's your work or other works, you need to give credit to this work and clarify what will be your contribution as compared to them, highlight your integrity and ethical scholarship. And also, you provide pointers for other readers who are reading your paper. You provide them pointers to refer to others, and extend their research. So, type of references that are commonly used in scientific papers. So basically, we can make reference to books and books chapters, of course, journal articles, and conference papers. In some cases, also, you can refer thesis and dissertation, but basically, thesis and dissertation would have publications. So the most common thing is that we make reference to those publications instead of this thesis. Web pages, this is less common. Only if it is, for example, a GitHub repository or a very important reference that you need to point out. And patents, so usually patents are referenced in patents, but also we can refer the patents in scientific papers as well. So regarding styling and formatting, there are major referencing styles. I don't know if you have heard about them, but every community, they do have reference styles, like the APA style, the American Psychological Association. This is common in psychological papers, education, sciences. They emphasize the author and the publication date. The MLA, the Modern Language Association, this is preferred in humanities and focusing on author and page number. The Chicago, it's versatile, used in history, humanities, and known for two systems notes. and also the author date. And the IEEE, that's probably more relevant for us, popular in engineering, computer science, and so on. This is an example on how to write for the different styles. The APA, they highlight the author name and the title. The MLA, okay, it's in this way. And this is for Chicago, notes and bibliography, or author and date. And then the IEEE. Okay, just I've taken one of our publications and expressed them in different styles and formats. Okay, this is, you can see the differences between this one and this one. Of course, now if you write in LaTeX, you don't have to go into those peculiarities because this is embedded into the style of the LaTeX. But if you write this in Word, you have to write this manually usually, or bring it from the referencing sources. But this is very crucial. The consistency of the style and format of references is very important. You should not write the references in different styles. This is for Chicago, how it is written. Last name and first name written completely. And for the IEEE, it's in this way. Of course, everybody knows about the BibTeX format. Okay, there are important fields, required fields, and there are optional fields. But in principle, when you write LaTeX, of course, most of the time you bring them directly from the IEEE of ArchiveX. But there is one thing that if you bring them from different sources, they might contain different information because there are some information that are optional and some information that are required. And in this case, if you bring them from different sources, there is a risk that your paper will have inconsistency in presenting the references styles. For example, maybe some of the sources, they provide the DOI and some other do not provide the DOI. In this case, you will have references with DOI and other references without DOI. So even if you use LaTeX, in principle, you should make sure that you have a consistent representation of your BibTeX format. And there are different types of references in BibTeX, like article. This is mainly for journals and magazines. Book, at book, is for books. In proceeding, this is for conference. Sometimes it's also made at conference, but usually we write it in proceedings, like this. You can also make a reference to a technical report, to miscellaneous type of references. This is like more broad. All the fields are optional, and usually we use this when we want to make a reference to a website, GitHub repository, YouTube video. We can use this one. Yeah.
بعض البيبرز موجودين مثلا في اركايفكس وبعضهم مو موجودين. لو انا اعتمدت مثلا على اركايف راح يصير في اختلاف.
You use archive for what? And you bring the reference from archive. Yeah, you bring the reference from archive, from item. Usually most of the publishers, they provide you a way on how to cite a paper. And one of the format that you have, it's BibTeX. There are different formats. They can provide you like plain text in APA format. They can provide you the BibTeX, for LaTeX. Usually, most of the publishers, they provide you this BibTeX information.
So it's available on Google Scholar? On Google Scholar also it's available?
Yes. Now it becomes available usually like it's a standard you download, but just make sure about the consistency of the optional fields.
Some publishers, they don't provide. So, for example, Elsevier, sometimes they provide only RIS. So you have a converter, online converter.
Yeah.
Put the RIS, it will convert it.
Yeah. You can convert. Yeah. There are different ways on how to convert. Okay, yeah. So field requirements, usually the author, the title, the journal, and publisher and year, these are required, and these are optional fields. But for completeness, in principle, we should always cite the volume, the number, the pages, the month, and all the relevant information. Okay, so these are just slides for you, to have more things, but I want to move the important part. Yeah, the requirement. Now, when you write an article, this is how to review the references section, either for yourself or for others. Okay, you must have correct citation for different types of material. Okay, if you use, for example, BibTeX, make sure that you are using the correct citation style for books, for articles, for web pages, according to the specific format, okay, by referencing the required by the referencing style. And the importance of consistency. This is what I've mentioned. For example, if you put a DOI link or a volume, the optional fields must be consistent across all the different references. Okay, include formatting of author names. For example, sometimes you write the author name, first name, and then the first character of the last name and the first character of the first name, or you write the whole full name. It must be consistent. You must use the same style.
طب دكتور لو في
Yeah.
مثلا دي او اي، لو في بعض الريفرنس فيها وما فيها، احذف الدي او اي من الريفرنس ولا كيف؟
Well, it's better for completeness. It's better to add even the DOI link, because DOI is like a unique reference for each paper. And yeah, in principle, you must add DOI link. But if it doesn't exist, you remove it. I mean, the consistency, you must write in the same way.
اوكي.
Okay, for example, if you write the author name in this way, it should be consistent. Sometimes some references could write this author name in this way, and some others they could also switch. Okay, putting the first name and then the last name, or writing in different format. Usually this is not perceived as good, okay, when for the presentation of your paper. Okay, in LaTeX usually it doesn't have camel case capitalization. So for example, if you want to capitalize NASA like this, you must put it also between brackets. And sometimes what we do, we can do double brackets. Okay, double bracket here and double bracket here to have the camel case capitalization consistent. Because if you don't do double brackets here and double brackets here, it's going to make this as capital letter, and all of this will be just lowercase. This is by default. Okay, so if you want to maintain the way how you've written it, you have to have double brackets at both ends. Okay, the importance of consistency in referencing and using citation tools and software. Okay, now if you use LaTeX, you don't need maybe these tools, but if you use Word or other editors, in this case, it could be useful to manage and organize your references. The common mistakes used in referencing is to provide inaccurate information. You must verify the details against the original sources. Make sure that you've made the right citations of the paper to ensure the accuracy in the author name. And this comes usually when you write manually. I remember in the early days we didn't have this luxury of downloading BibTeX and so on. We wrote all the references manually. This takes time and make it inconsistent. But now usually you have to download it from publisher websites and or DOI links. You will have less issues with inaccuracy. Incomplete citations. So some of the citation may be missing, for example, the author names or the title or the journal or the page number. Okay, in principle, you should have a comprehensive citation style and reference. Over and under citing. Okay, the number of citation per paper, it must be balanced. It depends on the length of the paper. For example, if in a conference paper you make 100 citations, this is probably going to consume like 3 pages or more. That's not common. So usually in conference paper we can have 10, maximum 20 citations. Okay, let's say between 10 and 20. In review papers you can have up to 100 citations, 200 citations. But you know, it's common in reviews to have 200 citations. That's very common in review papers. Refrain from excessive citation of unnecessary and marginally relevant sources. So the relevance, this is something very important. Everything that you cite must be pretty much related to your work. Don't just put citation like randomly. And under citing, acknowledge all sources of information and ideas to avoid plagiarism. Self-citation, that's one of the ethical issues nowadays that is trending. So many people, they put a lot of self-cited papers to increase their citation score and their H index. But you know, now the new metrics, they take into account these kind of self-citations, Okay, and now even in RIC, for example, we are making differentiation between citation and citations without self-citations. And when we see that there is a big gap, for example, if you have your H index difference of 10 points or 15 points between citation and self-citations, we consider that there is an ethical issue. So usually the margin of discrepancy should be 3 points, 4 points, 2 points, okay? And now the standard in self-citation shouldn't be more than 10%. This is the average worldwide. The average in Saudi Arabia is 19%, which is good. Okay, usually something below 20% is considered as good. 20 and 30%, is fair. Above 30%, that starts to be an issue. Okay, this means that among 10 papers, in general, you should cite yourself 3 times maximum. Okay, of course, if there is a need to cite yourself for a particular reason, that's not an issue, because at the end you care about an average. I mean, if you have a self-citation in a paper like 40% and another paper like 5%, that will compromise. But you should avoid just putting your citation like randomly just to increase your H index number or your citation number. This is not very well perceived. And now the current quality metrics, they pretty much take into account these issues. Yeah, and the problem of citation now, if we open that, I remember in 2009, 2010, there is the concept of publish or perish. This is before the start of Google Scholar. There was even I remember there was an application that is called Publish and Perish, from where you can collect your references and see your H index, and then Google Scholar came up and it becomes like a worldwide metric, the number of citation and the H index. But now we are in the era not publish or perish, it's publish and perish. And I'm going to write something around this because people, and I've sent last week like a small joke about science in the 19th centuries and the 21st centuries, is that people care more about citations, publications, more about the science advances. Many of the people, even Nobel Prizes, they don't have as many publications as a PhD student right now, and they've made complete difference in science advances. And this is one of the things that we are going to focus on in our strategic plan in research here at PSU, is that we try to focus more on science advances more than publication. Publications are good to actually reveal your science, but it shouldn't be like the means for a scientist. That makes big difference in terms of productivity and also the quality of the outcome that we may come up with. Okay, and also avoid outdated citations. The recency of references, this is one of the most important things. You have to be, usually your citation should fall within the last 5 years in majority. Okay, 70% of your citation should be within the last 5 years, 70%. This is a good practice. I mean, 60% would be acceptable, but usually you shouldn't be more than 70%, 60%. Okay, so the best practices after you write a paper, usually most of people don't look at the references section. They consider that this is like taken for granted, but usually you need to review, verify all citation details, balance the citation of sources to maintain the narrative's integrity and relevance, and update the literature reviews to include recent research and minimize the use of outdated sources. Okay, the criteria to assess and review references in a paper, the relevance. So, topical alignment, you must ensure that all the cited works directly contribute to the subject matter of the paper. The correctness, the reference should be recent enough to indicate that the research is up to date with the field, except for seminal works. Seminal works, if you talk about large language model, you will cite transformer paper, which is from 2017. Okay, or convolution neural network, you may cite AlexNet paper, which is from 2012. Okay, so some seminal works, you can go even for the 90s, for the 80s, if you build over something like substantial. But usually, as already mentioned, 70% of your work should be within the range of the last 5 years. The credibility, the source quality. Of course, you should make sure to cite top papers, okay, peer-reviewed journals in general, reputable publishers, and authoritative text. You should avoid predatory journals. You should avoid unauthentic sources. You should avoid like blogs. Okay, although I know blogs, Wikipedia could have relevant information, but it's not a scientific source to acknowledge in the paper. Okay, you may take use of it, but usually we make reference to peer-reviewed sources, okay, that went under the review of experts. The author expertise, consider the credential and expertise of the author being cited. That's also important. And evidence of bias, look for any potential bias or conflict of interest that may affect the validity of the source. It means don't reference yourself too much. Don't only reference your friends, okay? But, try to avoid bias. Just make reference of something what is relevant and credible. That's the rule of thumb. I mean, don't exclude yourself or your friends because of this, but don't make it excessive as well. It must be balanced approach. Quality and diversity. So verify that the paper cites a sufficient number of sources to support its claim and methodology. And the source diversity include a mix of sources from different viewpoints and research types like empirical studies, theoretical works, reviews, conference paper, journal papers, and so on. And the accuracy, we've talked about the accuracy of the presentation styles, formatting of the references. The consistency, we've talked about it also, the referencing style, the internal consistency, and the integration on contributions. The contribution to knowledge, of course, highlighting the gap when discussing the related research and contributing to advancing the understanding of the field for others. Avoidance of over-reliance and also ethical consideration. Now, ethical consideration, for example, sometimes you may want to use a picture from others. Now, the standard rule is that you must take permission from these people. You contact them and you ask them whether it is possible to include their picture or figure in your paper, and you cite it. So usually when you cite a paper, it's fine. I mean, because you have already mentioned the original source. But some of the publishers, they require still that you get a consent from others in order to take permission. The problem could be sometimes some of the pictures could be copyrighted. Okay, and this could have an issue. For example, if someone have used a copyrighted picture in his paper, maybe he get a permission for that copyrighted picture himself. And maybe you are not allowed to use these copyrighted pictures until you get it from the original person. This is why sometimes you need to go back and get consent from that person. And for example, if he's not the main responsible, he can also refer you to the other owner to get a consent. Sometimes there is a copyright issue, but usually in research papers, they're made by researchers, and it could be safe just to put them and cite them. But to be on the safe side, it's better to contact these people and get their consent before doing that. Now, to conclude how to analyze the citation and references, I'm going to show you now. I've made a small tool that provides statistics. This is one of our recent paper, still the same paper about the Rosneft bench, and they've made an analysis. Okay, so usually here, this is how we make the citation. We have the name of the authors, we have the year, we have the journal, the DOI, and so on. Okay, so there is some issues about the consistency, like some of the papers, they have DOI, some others they don't have. But the most important thing, the first thing that we would analyze is the recency of the references. And this is a descriptive statistics. It shows that the mean year is 2017, and the standard deviation is 6 years, and there is 62 references. Okay, the minimum is 1979, and the maximum year is 2023. And this is the 95% of the references are between 2016 and 2019, and the percentage of references in the last 5 years, 61%. So here we could suggest actually to have better, more references toward the last 5 years. I mean, I would like to have something around 70% here. That would be better. But in some of the cases, like for example, this particular paper, we might need to reference some older works that could be understood. And this is a box plot showing the concentration of references. There are some outliers, like we can see that there is only one paper in 2023, maybe here, and most of the papers are between 2016 and 2021. And you can have also a distribution of papers. So I have a tool, I'm going to make it available. You can just put your references and it will generate you a report similar to this one. Okay, just put the reference like this, copy paste, and it will generate descriptive statistics. And at the end, it can give you some recommendations also. The references analyzed show a wide range of publication years with a mean of 2017, and the majority of reference within 61% then published in the last 5 years. This indicates the author are using up-to-date sources for their research. But still, there is a recommendation to also use more recent research about that. Okay, so that's about referencing and citations. It's one of the important part. Some referees, they actually go into details in this part and make critics, especially if your work is not up to date. Okay, any questions?